My name is Colleen. I can still remember that Thanksgiving in Kansas City like it happened yesterday. I walked into my parents' house with two pieces of exciting news I had dreamed of sharing. I had just gotten engaged and I got my very first book deal. It should have been a night of celebrating, laughing, and having fun. But deep down, I knew what was coming. My family has always found a way to put me down, no matter what I did well. And just like I thought, during dinner, my parents suddenly yelled, "You're the most useless child in this family." My sister, sitting right next to me, smiled meanly and said, "No one expects anything from you." Everyone at the table went quiet. My heart was beating fast as everyone looked at me. The weight of years of staying quiet and feeling angry pressed down on me. They had no idea that this time I wasn't going to stay quiet. What I said next shocked everyone, and it changed everything. If your family ever embarrassed you in front of everyone, what would you have said? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how you would have handled it. Looking back, I realized my family not caring about me wasn't just a Thanksgiving problem. It was a problem my whole life. Growing up in Kansas City, I was the middle child stuck between my older brother and younger sister. My brother, a computer worker, was the favorite child, always praised for being smart. My sister, a money expert, was the princess who got tons of attention for being charming. Me, I was just Colleen, the one who disappeared into the background, no matter how hard I tried. When I was a kid, I'd spend hours studying, hoping to get a compliment from Mom or Dad. But their eyes always lit up for my brother's math awards or my sister's debate trophies. Once in 5th grade, I wrote a short story that won a school contest. I ran home holding the certificate, thinking they'd finally notice me. Mom looked at it, said, "That's nice, Colleen," and turned to brag about my brother's science fair win. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. That moment hurt, but it was just the beginning. By high school, I was putting my heart into writing, dreaming of becoming an author. I'd stay up late creating stories, but Mom would roll her eyes saying, "Writing's a hobby, not a real job. Look at your brother's steady job." Dad added, "Your sister's already working at a bank. Why can't you be practical?" Their words hurt deeply, and I started to believe I'd never be good enough. Even with that, I couldn't help but help my family. When Grandpa, Mom's dad, got sick in my early 20s, I was the one driving him to doctor's appointments, sitting with him during his treatments, and making sure he took his medicine. My brother was too busy with his tech company, and my sister said her money job left no time. I didn't mind at first. Grandpa was kind, and I loved his stories about teaching history at the university. But when I told Mom about it, she shrugged. "That's just what families do. No thank you, no noticing what I did." I also took on planning family events like Dad's 60th birthday party. I spent weeks planning, booking the place, and making invitations, all while doing my freelance writing jobs. My sister showed up with a fancy watch for Dad, and my brother sent a check from far away. Guess who got the praise? Not me. Mom smiled at them, saying, "You two make us so proud." I stood there holding a tray of snacks I'd made, feeling invisible. Even smaller things added up. When my sister needed help preparing for her money exam, I spent hours testing her, giving up my own work time. She passed and Mom threw a big dinner to celebrate, gushing about her smart girl. I wasn't even mentioned. When my brother's company hit a rough time, I stayed up late fixing his business presentations. He got money, and Dad made a speech about his success at a family cookout. My name never came up. The worst part, they'd call me whenever they needed something. Mom would say, "Colleen, can you take Grandpa to his appointment?" Or, "Colleen, the family reunion needs planning." I always said yes, thinking it would make them see I was valuable. But it never did. They'd take my time, my hard work, and then turn around and praise my siblings for their real accomplishments. By my 30s, I was tired. I'd built a decent freelance writing career, but Mom still called it scribbling. Dad would ask when I get a proper job like my brother. My sister, meanwhile, loved pointing out how her money career was actually helping the world. Their words hurt, but I kept showing up, hoping one day they'd notice me. That Thanksgiving, I walked into their house thinking maybe, just maybe, my big news would change things. I drove to my parents' house with my stomach in knots. I'd spent weeks making gifts for everyone, hoping they'd finally see my effort. In my bag were a handmade table runner for the dining room and a scrapbook filled with family photos I'd carefully collected from old albums. I'd stayed up late designing each page, thinking it would create some warmth, maybe even a smile. My heart raced with hope, but a familiar fear stayed with me. My family never valued what I did. As I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath and got out, holding my gifts. Mom met me at the door with her lips tight. "You're late again," she said, barely looking at me before turning back inside. I followed her into the living room where my sister was relaxing on the couch, looking at her phone. She looked up, smiled meanly, and said, "Nice to see you finally made it, Colleen." Her tone was full of rudeness, and I bit my lip to keep from saying something back. I set my gifts on the coffee table, hoping for a reaction. "I made these for everyone," I said, pulling out the table runner. Mom raised an eyebrow and muttered, "That's old-fashioned. Did you get it at a thrift store?" My sister laughed, not even looking at it, and said, "Cute, but it doesn't really match the style here." I forced a smile, my chest tightening. Dad walked in, saw the runner, and shrugged. "It's fine," he said, then turned to my sister. "Did you bring that wine you talked about? That's what we need for tonight." My brother arrived shortly after carrying a fancy leather planner for Mom and a high-end coffee machine for Dad. Mom's face lit up. "Oh, you always know what we love," she said, hugging him tightly. My sister added on, showing a designer scarf she bought for Mom. "I saw it and thought of you," she said, earning a big smile. My gift sat untouched, pushed to the side as Mom loved their gifts. I swallowed hard, trying to shake off the hurt. Trying to change the mood, I pulled out the scrapbook. "I put this together for the family," I said, opening it to show photos from our childhood vacations, birthdays, moments I thought they'd treasure. Mom barely looked at it before saying, "That's sweet, but we don't need old pictures making a mess." My sister rolled her eyes. "Colleen, nobody has time for that," she said, then turned to Dad. "Did I tell you about my latest deal at work? Huge client." Dad nodded, clearly impressed, and started talking about her promotion. I stood there holding the scrapbook, my face burning. I'd spent hours on it thinking it would mean something. Instead, it was dismissed like it was nothing. Dad didn't even comment, just kept praising my sister's career. My brother, meanwhile, was showing Mom how to use the coffee machine, and she was going on about how thoughtful he was. My gifts were still on the table, ignored as if I hadn't even tried. Grandpa came downstairs, moving slowly with his cane. He saw the scrapbook and smiled. "You did this, Colleen?" he asked, his voice warm. I nodded, grateful for his attention, but Mom cut in before I could answer. "Let's not get distracted," she said. "We need to set the table for dinner." My sister smiled meanly again, whispering to Dad, "She's always trying to make everything about her." Dad didn't disagree, just gave a slight nod. I helped carry dishes to the dining room, my hands shaking. Every mean comment, every dismissal felt like a knife stabbing deeper. I kept telling myself to stay calm, that dinner might be different. Maybe when I shared my news, they'd finally see me. But as we finished setting up, Mom looked at me and said, "Colleen, try not to mess anything up tonight." My sister laughed, and Dad stayed silent, his eyes on his phone. I grabbed the edge of the table, my strength breaking, and headed into the dinner I'd been dreading. When the whole family sat down at the dinner table, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was my moment to shine. I fixed my napkin, took a deep breath, and got ready to share my engagement and book deal. The table was crowded with my parents, my sister, my brother, and Grandpa, all talking over the sound of glasses clinking. I waited for a pause, my heart pounding with hope, ready to finally be heard. "Everyone," I started, my voice steady. "I have some big news." But before I could finish, Mom cut me off. "Hold on, Colleen," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Your brother was just telling us about his new project at work. Go ahead, son." My brother leaned forward, starting a story about his latest computer program launch, his voice full of confidence. Mom beamed, nodding along, while Dad listened carefully to every word, asking more questions. I sank back in my chair, my words stuck in my throat. When he finished, I tried again. "Okay, so I wanted to share," but my sister interrupted, her tone sharp. "Can we talk about something actually worth hearing?" she said, smiling meanly. "I just closed a huge deal at work. My boss says I'm on track for a promotion." Mom clapped her hands, gushing. "That's my girl, always making us proud." Dad raised his glass, toasting her success. My stomach hurt, but I forced a smile, holding my fork tightly. The conversation kept going with Mom and Dad praising my brother's leadership and my sister's ambition. I sat there silent, feeling like a ghost at my own family's table. Grandpa tried to change the subject, asking about my writing, but Mom brushed him off. "Let's not bore everyone with that," she said, giving me a look. My sister laughed quietly, muttering, "Yeah, no one cares about her little stories." That was it. My patience snapped. I set my fork down, the clatter cutting through their talking. "You know what?" I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I'm tired of this. Every time I try to share something, you shut me down. You act like I'm nothing." Mom's eyes widened, but she didn't interrupt. My sister scoffed, crossing her arms. Dad just stared, his mouth slightly open. "I was going to tell you I got engaged," I continued, my voice getting louder, "and I got a book deal, a big one. But you don't care. You never have." My sister rolled her eyes, muttering, "Oh, here we go." Mom leaned forward, her tone icy. "Colleen, stop making a scene. You're the most useless child in this family, always complaining, never doing anything real." My sister nodded, adding, "No one expects anything from you, Colleen. Why would we?" Their words hit like a punch, repeating every doubt I'd carried for years. But instead of shrinking, something inside me roared. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor, and looked right at them. "If I'm so useless," I said, my voice steady now, "then stop expecting me to run this family's life. I'm done holding everything together while you tear me apart." The room went silent. Mom's face turned pale. My sister's mean smile disappeared, and Dad looked away, uncomfortable. Even my brother seemed shocked, his usual confidence gone. Grandpa's eyes met mine, a quiet nod of support. But I didn't wait for anyone to respond. My heart was racing, but I felt a strange clarity. I'd finally said it. As I turned to leave, Grandpa's voice cut through the silence. "You should be ashamed," he said, his tone sharp, glaring at Mom and Dad. "Colleen's been nothing but loyal, and you treat her like she's invisible." Mom's face tightened, but she didn't respond. Dad shifted in his seat, avoiding Grandpa's look. My sister scoffed, muttering, "Here we go with the drama." I stopped at the doorway, my hands shaking. I couldn't walk away without them knowing the truth. "You think I'm useless?" I said, turning back to face them. "Let me tell you what I've done for this family." My voice was steady, but my heart raced. When Grandpa was sick, I gave up a book deal, a big one, to drive him to every treatment. I was there. Not you, not my brother, not my sister. Me. Grandpa's eyes softened, but Mom interrupted, her voice cold. "That's your duty as family, Colleen. Don't act like a hero." My sister smiled meanly, adding, "Yeah, stop looking for praise." I ignored them and kept going. "And you," I said, pointing at my sister. "Your big 30th birthday party. I spent weeks planning it, booking the place, picking your favorite flowers. You didn't even say thank you. You just bragged about your new job while I cleaned up." My sister's face turned red, her mean smile gone. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "I could have hired someone to do that." Dad finally spoke, his voice hesitant. "Colleen, we didn't know. I mean, we appreciated it." But his words felt empty, and I shook my head. "No, you didn't," I said. "You never do. You praise my brother's tech deals and my sister's promotions, but my efforts? They're nothing to you." Grandpa stood, leaning on his cane. "She's right," he said, his voice firm. "You two," he pointed at Mom and Dad, "have always favored the others. Colleen's been the backbone, and you've ignored her." Mom's jaw clenched, and she snapped, "Don't lecture me, Dad. We've done plenty for her." Dad rubbed his temples, muttering, "Let's not make this worse." But it was too late. The room exploded into chaos. My sister stood yelling, "You're just jealous, Colleen. You're twisting everything to make us look bad." My brother, usually quiet, tried to calm her. "Let's talk this out," he said. But his voice was drowned out by Mom's sharp response. "You're ungrateful," she said to me. "We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us." Dad just sat there looking lost, unable to meet my eyes. I took a step back, my chest tight. "I've given everything," I said, my voice breaking. "I've sacrificed my time, my career, my peace, and you still call me useless. I'm done." I turned again, ignoring my sister's yelling and Mom's protests. Grandpa called after me. "You're enough, Colleen." But I couldn't look back. I grabbed my coat and walked out into the cold Kansas City night. I drove straight to Kristen's apartment, my hands shaking on the wheel. She opened the door before I could knock, her face full of worry. "What happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. "You okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. I nodded, though my throat was tight. "I just walked out on my family," I said, my words heavy. "I told them I'm done holding everything together." Kristen sat beside me, her eyes steady. "You were brave, Colleen," she said. "They've taken you for granted for too long. You don't owe them anything." Her words hit hard, grounding me. I'd known Kristen since college, and she'd always been my rock, the one who saw my worth when my family didn't. I keep thinking maybe I overreacted, I admitted. But I'm so tired of them dismissing me. "You didn't overreact," Kristen said firmly. "They crossed a line, calling you useless. That's not family, that's cruelty." I took a shaky breath, her words sinking in. "I told them about my engagement, my book deal," I said. "They didn't even blink. Just kept praising my brother and sister." Kristen shook her head. "That's their loss, not yours. You're building an incredible life. They don't get to claim credit for it." My phone lit up again. A text from Mom. "Colleen, you're being dramatic. Come back and talk like an adult." I showed Kristen and she snorted. "Dramatic? She's the one who called you useless." Another text came through from my sister. "You're making this about you as usual. We didn't mean it like that." I rolled my eyes, my anger rising. "They don't even see what they did wrong," I said. Kristen leaned forward. "They're trying to guilt you back. Don't let them." I nodded, my determination growing. I opened my phone and blocked Mom's number, then my sister's. My fingers hesitated over Dad's, but his silence at dinner hurt just as much. I blocked him too. "I'm done with their excuses," I said, my voice steady. Kristen squeezed my hand. "Good. You deserve people who lift you up, not tear you down." A few days later, my brother called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Colleen, I'm sorry," he said, his voice soft. "I didn't realize how much you've been doing for us. I should have spoken up." I listened, my heart conflicted. He'd never been as mean as Mom or my sister, but his silence had hurt just the same. "I appreciate that," I said, "but it's too late. I've spent years trying to prove myself to you all. I'm not doing it anymore." He paused, then said, "I get it. I hope we can talk someday." I didn't respond, just hung up and blocked his number, too. It wasn't easy. Part of me still wanted his approval. But I knew Kristen was right. I had to choose myself. "You did the right thing," Kristen said when I told her. "He's not a bad guy, but he's part of the problem. You're not required to fix their mess." Over the next week, Kristen checked in every day, bringing takeout or taking me out for coffee to keep my spirits up. We talked about my engagement, my book deal, and how I wanted to move forward. "You've got so much going for you," she said one evening, her voice warm. "Focus on that. Let them figure out their own lives." Her support felt like a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone. I started to feel lighter, like I'd dropped a heavy weight I'd carried for years. Blocking my family wasn't just about anger. It was about getting my peace back. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had Kristen, my fiancé, and my own dreams to chase. For the first time, I believed I could build a life without their shadow. Months after I walked away, I heard whispers about my family's struggles. My cousin, who still kept in touch, mentioned that Mom and Dad hadn't hosted their yearly summer cookout, something I'd always organized. Without me, they couldn't pull it together. My sister, meanwhile, had lost a big client at work, a deal she'd bragged about for months. Apparently, her stress was obvious, and her coworkers noticed her usual confidence falling apart. I didn't feel happy hearing this, but I didn't feel guilty either. For once, I wasn't the one fixing their problems. I focused on my own life instead. After months of negotiations, I signed a big book deal with a publisher in New York, one that was much bigger than the one I'd given up years ago to care for Grandpa. The advance was enough to change everything. Justin and I sat down one evening, spreadsheets open, and started planning. "We could buy a place," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Somewhere that's ours." I nodded, my heart full. We found a cozy apartment in Kansas City with big windows and a small balcony, perfect for morning coffee. Signing the papers felt like a victory, a step toward a future I'd built myself. Kristen was there every step of the way. She helped us pick out furniture, joking about my terrible taste in throw pillows. One night over pizza at our new place, she raised a glass. "To you, Colleen," she said, grinning. "You're crushing it." I laughed, clinking my glass against hers. Her support had carried me through the darkest moments, and now we were closer than ever, planning weekly dinners, and even a trip to Chicago for a writers' conference she insisted I attend. Grandpa, too, became a constant in my life. I'd visit him every Sunday, bringing takeout and old history books he loved. He'd share stories of his teaching days, his eyes lighting up as we talked. "You're my pride," he told me once, his voice soft. "Don't ever let them make you doubt that." I hugged him tightly, grateful for his constant belief in me. He never mentioned Mom or Dad, and I didn't ask. That part of my life was closed. My family's absence left a strange quiet. I'd blocked their numbers, but my cousin's updates painted a picture. Mom was struggling to keep family traditions alive, complaining to relatives about how things fell apart. My sister's career wasn't as perfect as she claimed, and she'd stopped posting her usual polished updates online. Dad, apparently, spent more time in his workshop, avoiding everyone. My brother had reached out once more, leaving a voicemail I didn't return. His apology stayed in my mind, but it wasn't enough to pull me back. I poured my energy into my work. My book, a novel about a woman breaking free from expectations, was getting buzz even before it came out. My editor called one morning, excited about early reviews. "This is going to be big, Colleen," she said. I hung up, smiling, and told Justin the news. He pulled me into a hug, whispering, "I knew you'd do it." We celebrated that night with Kristen, who insisted on opening champagne and toasting to the author who proved them all wrong. Moving into our apartment felt like a fresh start. Justin and I spent weekends decorating, arguing playfully over paint colors. I set up a small office in the corner with a desk by the window where I could write. For the first time, I felt like my life was mine, not defined by my family's judgment or their endless demands. Kristen stopped by often, bringing her infectious energy, and Grandpa's visits filled the place with warmth. I was building a new family, one that saw me for who I was. As I stood on our balcony one evening, looking out at the city lights, I realized I was free. My family's struggles weren't my burden anymore. I had Justin, Kristen, Grandpa, and my own strength to carry me forward. The future felt wide open, and I was ready to write my own story. A year later, I stood in a small garden, ready to marry Justin. The air was warm, filled with the smell of blooming flowers, and the setting sun made everything glow golden. I'd chosen a simple white dress, nothing fancy, and Justin looked at me like I was the only person in the world. We planned a tiny wedding, just the way we wanted, close and meaningful. Only Kristen and Grandpa sat in the front row, their smiles brighter than the summer sky. Kristen, my maid of honor, fixed my veil with a grin. "You're stunning," she whispered, her eyes sparkling. I squeezed her hand, grateful for her constant presence. Grandpa, in his best suit, leaned on his cane and winked at me. "You've made this old man proud," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I fought back tears, knowing their love was all I needed today. My family, Mom, Dad, my sister, my brother wasn't invited. I hadn't spoken to them since I blocked their numbers, and I felt no regret. This day was for those who saw my worth. The ceremony was short, but heartfelt. Justin and I exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to build a life of trust and joy. When he slid the ring onto my finger, I felt a weight lift, like the past was finally behind me. Kristen cheered louder than anyone when we kissed, and Grandpa clapped, his smile wide. Afterward, we gathered at a small reception in a nearby barn decorated with fairy lights and wildflowers. Kristen gave a toast, her voice steady. "To Colleen," she said, raising her glass, for choosing herself and showing us what strength looks like. I blushed, clinking glasses with her and Justin. As we danced under the stars, I thought about the journey that brought me here. I'd spent years trying to win my family's approval, bending over backward to keep them together. But that Thanksgiving, when they called me useless, something changed. I learned that love shouldn't come with conditions. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was survival. I'd walked away from people who made me feel small. And in their place, I found those who lifted me up. Kristen, with her fierce loyalty, and Grandpa, with his quiet wisdom, showed me what family could mean. Justin, my partner, reminded me every day that I was enough. My book had come out a few months earlier, climbing bestseller lists. Readers sent letters saying my story about breaking free spoke to them. That success, paired with our new apartment and this wedding, felt like a dream I'd fought hard to earn. I didn't gloat about my family's struggles, Mom's failed traditions, my sister's lost deal, Dad's withdrawal, or my brother's silence. Their absence no longer hurt. I'd built a life that didn't need their approval. Looking at Justin laughing as he spun me on the dance floor, I felt whole. Kristen joined us, pulling Grandpa into a gentle sway, and we all laughed, the moment perfect. I'd chosen this, people who respected me, who saw my heart. That was the lesson I carried. You don't have to stay where you're not valued. You can walk away, set boundaries, and build something better. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I turned to the camera, knowing this story would reach others. If you've ever felt unseen, I said, my voice clear, know that you're not alone. Choose the people who choose you. Set those boundaries. Your worth isn't defined by those who can't see it. I paused, smiling. And if you've got a story like mine, share it below. Let's lift each other up. With that, I turned back to Justin, ready for the life we create.